Careful, boys! A voice called across the training yard, laced with sarcasm. Here comes the pipe rat. Hide your rifles before she decides to fix those too. A ripple of laughter broke through the squad of recruits lined up near the obstacle course. The midday sun baked the Utah desert, and the concrete courtyard of Ravenrock complex shimmered with heat. The source of their mockery was a small woman hunched beneath a tangle of exposed water lines, a wrench slipping in her grease-stained hands. Her navy blue coveralls bore a patch that read simply, "Maintenance Crew, Civilian." "Hey, ma'am," another soldier shouted, grinning wide. "You lose your knitting club?" "Wrong building." More chuckles. The woman didn't respond. She tightened the valve, tested the pipe, then wiped her forehead with the back of her wrist. Her dark auburn hair was pulled into a no-nonsense bun, strands sticking from sweat. She looked plain, tired, and much too small for the fortress-like base around her. Her name, according to the clipboard one sergeant had glanced at once, was Nora Callahan. Age 35, contractor, level 2 clearance. She came in before dawn every day, fixed whatever was broken, and slipped out long after most soldiers were back in their bunks. Invisible. Forgettable. And apparently the perfect target for jokes. "Pipe rat," a recruit muttered as she walked past carrying her toolbox. "Bet she's never even held a rifle. She couldn't hit a target if it was painted neon and standing still," another said, earning more laughter. That was Ravenrock, a fortress carved into desert stone, surrounded by electrified fencing, guard towers, and motion-activated turrets. Officially it was a joint training facility, where Army Rangers, SEAL detachments, and experimental drone units drilled together. Unofficially, everyone whispered it was a testing ground for technology too dangerous to keep near populated areas. It was a place where rank meant survival. Respect was currency. And Nora had neither. She didn't argue. Didn't even glance at them. Just lowered her head, shouldered the toolbox, and disappeared into a maintenance hatch beneath the yard. The soldiers laughed a little longer, until the PA system crackled. A calm, controlled female voice cut through the static. "Control, this is Spectre 9. I have visual on the breach." For one breathless second, the entire compound froze. "Spectre what?" one of the recruits blurted out, blinking at the PA speaker. But the voice was gone, replaced by the base operator announcing routine drill status. The young soldiers laughed it off, calling it some kind of interference, maybe a tech glitch. Within minutes, they were back to joking about pipe rat and who'd pull kitchen duty next week. For Nora Callahan, it was just another day. She climbed out of the hatch 20 minutes later, hands raw and wet from handling a burst line that had nearly scalded a storage bay. She carried her toolbox in silence, walking past the same men who had mocked her earlier. "Careful," one smirked, tapping his buddy's shoulder. "Looks like she's got boiling water in there. Maybe she's dangerous after all." Nora didn't even blink. She just moved past them with that small, even stride, no faster, no slower. She had perfected the art of being unseen while standing in plain sight. Every morning at exactly 0500 hours, she arrived through the east gate, flashing her civilian badge at the MPs. Always early, always alone. Her coveralls were faded, sun-bleached at the shoulders. Her boots, unlike the spit-shined pairs of the soldiers, were worn down and scarred with years of hard labor. She kept her auburn hair tied in the same simple knot, not for style but for efficiency. At 1700 hours, when the sun dipped and the soldiers gathered for mess, she vanished the same way she came in. No goodbyes, no chatter, no drinks in the mess hall. Just a shadow slipping out with her battered lunchbox and the faintest limp in her left step. The truth was, most people didn't even bother remembering her name. She was just the maintenance lady. The one who fixed the pipes, kept the fans spinning, and unclogged drains when the barracks laundry backed up. And Ravenrock was merciless. Mockery followed her like a shadow. "You lost, ma'am?" a sergeant had barked just last week when she accidentally crossed the edge of the landing pad during a hello drill. "Restricted area. Move it!" His men had laughed openly as she retreated, head low. Yet, if anyone had been paying attention, they might have noticed something strange. Nora never flinched. Not at sirens. Not at shouted insults. Not even when live gunfire echoed across the yard. Where others startled, she simply kept working, eyes calm, hands steady. A base like Ravenrock thrived on respect earned through combat, badges, scars, deployments. Nora had none of those. And so the soldiers dismissed her as irrelevant. But sometimes, the people most invisible are the ones watching the closest. That night, as desert winds howled against the outer walls, the internal alarm screamed awake at 0230 hours. Unauthorized drone signatures, 3 of them, crossed into restricted airspace. Within minutes, Ravenrock was on lockdown. Spotlights swept the sky. Sirens wailed. Soldiers scrambled into defensive positions. And far beyond the perimeter fence, a lone figure crouched among the rocks, moving with practiced silence. Binoculars raised. Eyes locked on the horizon. A voice crackled over a private frequency. Calm. Controlled. Female. Spectre 9. Eyes on target. The alarms ripped through Ravenrock like a living thing, shrill and urgent, bouncing off the concrete walls. Multiple inbound signatures, the control tower officer shouted over comms. Unidentified drones, Sector 4, heading southwest at 40 knots. Barracks doors flew open. Boots hit the ground. Half-dressed soldiers grabbed rifles, strapping on tactical vests as the sirens turned the night red. Floodlights snapped on, cutting across the desert scrub. Search teams fanned out. This isn't a drill. Captain Jennings barked as he charged past the formation yard. Move your asses, move! The compound transformed in minutes. What had been a quiet fortress in the desert now buzzed with the precision of a hornet's nest kicked open. In the chaos, nobody noticed the maintenance worker standing by the perimeter wall, toolbox at her feet. Nora Callahan looked up at the floodlights, her brown eyes reflecting the sweep of the beams. While soldiers scrambled and cursed, she simply leaned against the concrete, arms crossed. Her breathing never changed. To anyone watching, she looked bored. But to the trained eye, her posture wasn't boredom. It was calculated stillness. Through the comms net, chatter was frantic. Visual lost on Drone 1. Sector 6, movement in the trees. Negative ID, thermal scan clean. The desert air shimmered with dust kicked up by rotor wash as 2 scout helicopters lifted from the pad, sweeping the horizon. Inside the control bunker, the officers barked orders over the blaring alarms. But in the corner of the screen, unnoticed by most, one of the surveillance cameras caught movement near the eastern rocks, a lone silhouette, slipping through the shadows with unnerving precision. Contact? A young operator asked, squinting. Probably one of ours, the lieutenant muttered, too distracted by the drone signatures to care. Out at the perimeter, Nora shifted her weight, adjusting the strap of her lunchbox. The sirens didn't touch her. The tension didn't crease her face. If anything, she looked like she'd heard this sound 1,000 times before. A few yards away, Staff Sergeant Keene glanced at her. His rifle hung loose at his side as sweat trickled down his temple. You're just gonna stand there? He snapped. Lady, we're under attack. Get inside before. He stopped. Her eyes met his for the first time. Calm. Steady. I'll be fine, Nora said, voice low but firm. You should focus on your sector. Keene frowned, unsettled by the confidence in her tone. He opened his mouth to retort, but just then, a thunderous boom cracked across the desert. One of the drones had detonated prematurely, showering the sands and sparks. Every soldier dropped into firing stance. Keene spun away, shouting into his radio. By the time he looked back, Nora had already vanished into the shadows near the maintenance tunnels. And in the far distance, a voice whispered over a scrambled frequency no one on base could intercept. Spectre 9. Tracking confirmed. Adjusting position. By sunrise, Ravenrock was buzzing with rumors. The official report claimed the drone incursion had been neutralized before contact. But the soldiers knew better. 3 signatures had entered restricted airspace. Only 2 had been accounted for. The missing one was the subject of every whispered conversation at breakfast. Probably just a sensor glitch, Private Dale muttered, poking at his powdered eggs. Yeah? Keen shot back. Then explain why Command locked half the sector down till dawn. Nobody had an answer. While the rest of the base speculated, Nora Callahan was already ankle-deep in water, kneeling in the sub-level cooling chamber. A critical water main had burst during the night, flooding the maintenance tunnels. Superheated steam hissed around her as she worked, wrench turning with steady precision. She barely noticed the soldier who stopped at the doorway. Staff Sergeant Keene leaned against the frame, arms folded. He hadn't forgotten her calm stare the night before. And now, watching her work in the heat and chaos, he noticed something odd. Her hands, though stained with rust and grease, moved with a surgeon's precision. No fumbling, no wasted motion. She didn't even check the manual gauges. She just seemed to know exactly how much pressure to release before tightening the line. Hell of a mess, Keene said finally. Nora didn't look up. It's stable now. Won't blow again. He frowned. How can you be sure? You didn't even. She glanced at him, eyes calm, and said simply, because I've seen worse. Keene froze. Something in her tone made the hair rise on his arms. It wasn't bravado. It wasn't arrogance. It was experience. As she shifted to grab another tool, the sleeve of her coveralls slipped back just an inch. Just enough for Keene to glimpse ink beneath her skin, faded silver lines forming the outline of a bird, wings tucked, talons gripping something. He didn't know much about tattoos, but he knew military insignia when he saw it. And this one wasn't standard issue. His voice caught. That mark, what is it? Nora tugged her sleeve back down without hesitation. Nothing. Old mistake. She stood, toolbox in hand, already moving past him. But Keene couldn't shake it. He had seen that symbol before, buried in some after-action report during his deployment to Eastern Europe. A mark tied to a unit that didn't officially exist. A ghost unit. He swallowed hard, watching her disappear into the stairwell. For the first time since he'd mocked her, Keene felt a chill crawl up his spine. Keene couldn't let it go. The bird insignia burned in his mind all day. He'd seen it once, buried deep in a classified briefing packet during his last deployment to Poland. Back then, it had been labeled with a single code name, Spectre Division. A unit that didn't exist. Officially, at least. That night, while the barracks lights dimmed and soldiers dozed off, Keene sat hunched at the edge of his bunk, whispering to Corporal Reyes. I'm telling you, it was the same mark. A falcon, wings folded. Not standard. Reyes snorted. So what? People get tattoos. Maybe she just likes birds. No, Keene hissed. It wasn't some hobby ink. I saw it in a file once. Ghost Ops, black budget stuff. Spectre Division. Every guy in that report was listed Kia 7 years ago. Reyes rolled his eyes, pulling his blanket tighter. You're saying the pipe lady is a dead spook? You been sniffing cleaning solvent, man? But Keene didn't laugh. His gut told him this wasn't just imagination. The next morning, he pulled his courage together and went straight to Captain Jennings. Sir, I need to report something unusual about one of the contractors. Jennings barely looked up from his paperwork. If it's another laundry clog, put it through facilities like everyone else. No, sir. This is different. Keene leaned forward, lowering his voice. The maintenance worker, Nora Callahan. She's got a mark on her arm. Looks exactly like. Jennings cut him off with a sharp hand. Stop right there. Whatever rumor you think you've uncovered, forget it. We don't waste time chasing ghost stories. Understand? Keene hesitated. But sir, I said understood? The weight of authority pressed down hard. Keene stiffened. Yes, sir. But the doubt only grew. That night, just as lights out settled, the alarm screamed again. This time, not for a drone. Motion sensors along Sector 7 flared to life, detecting coordinated movement inside the perimeter. Searchlights tore across the fence line. Guards sprinted into position. When the patrol arrived, they found the wire cut clean, like with surgical precision. Boot prints marked the dirt, leading straight toward the communications tower. And then nothing. No intruder. No trail. Just silence. The soldiers whispered nervously as they searched. Back in the tunnels, Nora Callahan was already at work, covered in dust, fixing a ventilation shaft. Her expression didn't change when the sirens blared overhead. Unlike the others, she didn't even pause. Her hands kept moving calm and steady, as if she already knew it wasn't over. The following day, Ravenrock felt different. Conversations were shorter, glances sharper. Everyone knew the fence breach hadn't been a drill, and no one liked the idea that someone had slipped through their defenses unseen. Keane found himself watching Nora Callahan more than his assigned patrol routes. She was everywhere and nowhere at once, under a stairwell fixing wiring, crouched behind a generator, or climbing into ducts too small for most men to even squeeze through. Always alone. Always moving like she knew every inch of Ravenrock better than its own blueprints. He started timing her. She arrived at 0500 sharp, left around 1800. No variation. No lingering. But twice, Keane caught her taking detours that didn't make sense for a maintenance worker. Once slipping into a restricted stairwell near the comms hub. Another time carrying a sealed envelope to the outgoing post bin. That last detail stuck with him. Later that night, curiosity gnawed at his gut until he finally caved. He pulled a favor from a clerk in logistics and managed to glimpse the envelope. The handwriting was neat, precise, block lettering. It was addressed simply to Echo Victor Unit. No city. No street. No zip code. The return section was completely blank. Keane felt a cold weight drop in his stomach. Who the hell writes letters to nowhere? He carried the discovery straight to Captain Jennings, slamming the envelope onto his desk. Sir, this isn't normal. She's communicating with someone off-grid. Look at the address. This isn't civilian. This is code. Jennings stared at him, then at the envelope. His jaw tightened. For the first time, the captain didn't dismiss him outright. You've been tailing a civilian contractor, Sergeant? Jennings asked coolly. Keane swallowed. Respectfully, sir, this isn't just some plumber. She's... But before he could finish, the alarm blared again. 0300 hours. Sector 9 perimeter this time. Motion detectors caught 3 separate movements heading toward the southern comms tower. God damn it, Jennings growled, grabbing his rifle. Get your squad moving! Keane rushed to his post, but his mind wasn't on the fence line. As he sprinted across the compound, his eyes swept the shadows near the tunnels. And sure enough, there she was, Nora Callahan. Toolbox in hand, walking straight into the darkness, calm as ever, while the rest of the base roared with confusion. The southern sector was chaos. Floodlights swept the perimeter, dogs barked, radios crackled with overlapping voices. Yet when Keane's squad reached the breach point, they found the same unsettling story: clean wire cuts, boot prints in the dirt, and then nothing. The trail vanished as if the intruders had melted into the night. Captain Jennings cursed under his breath. 3 incursions in 48 hours and not a single body? Somebody out there is playing chess, and we're the pawns. The soldiers muttered uneasily. Keane stayed quiet, scanning the edges of the compound. He swore he'd seen Nora heading toward the tunnels just as the alarm blared. But when he checked the maintenance log 30 minutes later, her name was already signed off for a cooling system inspection. Perfectly timed, perfectly normal. Almost too normal. That morning, in the command office, Jennings laid the reports on Colonel Mercer's desk. Mercer was an older man, silver hair cropped short, his face lined like cracked stone. He studied the documents in silence, tapping a scarred finger against the breach map. Sir, Jennings said carefully, I've got one of my staff sergeants raising concerns about a civilian contractor. The timing of her movements, the strange mail she's sending. Mercer's eyes lifted sharply. Her name? Nora Callahan. Maintenance detail. Requisitioned 6 months ago through civilian channels. Mercer didn't answer right away. His gaze drifted to the corner of the room, distant, as if he just heard an echo from years past. Finally, he muttered, "Callahan." Jennings frowned. "You know her?" Mercer's expression hardened. "No. But I know the name. There was a Callahan attached to a ghost unit years back. Off the books. Handful of operatives trained for insertion, sabotage, deep recon. They vanished after Eastern Europe. Paperwork buried. Never existed." Jennings stiffened. "You're saying?" "I'm saying nothing." Mercer snapped the folder shut. "And neither are you. This base is already one spark away from panic. The last thing we need is rumors about phantoms in coveralls. Watch her. Quietly. If she's who I think she is." He let the thought hang like a blade in the air. That night, Keene couldn't shake the feeling of being followed as he crossed the dim barracks yard. He turned sharply, and there she was. Nora Callahan, standing in the half-light, toolbox at her side. "You've been watching me," she said softly. Not accusing. Not angry. Just stating fact. Keene's throat went dry. "What are you?" Her eyes held his for a long moment. Then she stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Not what you think. But if you want to stay alive, you'll stop asking questions." And then she walked past him, disappearing into the dark like smoke. Keene stood frozen, his pulse hammering, realizing one thing for certain: she wasn't a contractor. She was something much, much worse. The attack came just before dawn. No warning sirens this time. Only the thunder of mortars slamming into the ridge above Ravenrock. Shockwaves rattled the bunkers, dust cascaded from the ceilings, and soldiers scrambled half-dressed for weapons. Keene and his squad sprinted toward the comms tower. Shadows poured through the breach like a flood, masked men, trained, disciplined, their weapons cutting arcs of fire. Ravenrock's defenses buckled under the precision of it. Whoever they were, they weren't amateurs. Pinned behind a concrete barrier, Keene's rifle clattered empty. He fumbled for a fresh mag, and froze. Because there, standing in the open under tracer fire, was Nora Callahan. Gone was the slouching civilian gait. She moved with sharp, surgical precision, toolbox kicked aside, rifle in her hands like it belonged there all along. Her coveralls were torn at the sleeve, revealing the falcon tattoo fully. She wasn't hiding anymore. 3 hostiles dropped before Keene could blink, each shot placed like a signature. Then she was moving, sliding low, bursting into a sprint, vaulting the barricade and cutting a gunman down with the same wrench she'd been fixing pipes with days earlier. The soldiers around her stared in shock, but she didn't wait for orders. She barked them instead. "Flank left! Pin their advance! You on the tower now!" Even Jennings hesitated before obeying. Within minutes, the momentum shifted. The intruders faltered under the counterstrike, their surprise advantage bleeding away as Nora drove the defense like she'd rehearsed it 1,000 times. By sunrise, the compound was smoking but standing. Dozens of masked bodies lay scattered by the wire. Ravenrock had survived. Jennings approached her slowly, chest heaving, rifle hanging loose in his hands. "You want to tell me what the hell you really are, Callahan?" Nora reloaded calmly, eyes scanning the horizon as if the battle wasn't over. "I was never here," she said. "And if command asks, you held the line. You saved the tower. You get the credit." Jennings bristled. "That's not how this works. We don't just..." But when he turned, she was already gone. Toolbox in hand, coveralls dusty, melting back into the tunnels like a ghost. Keene watched her vanish, his heart still pounding. He finally understood the truth. Ravenrock hadn't been defended by soldiers alone. It had been saved by someone who didn't exist. Someone who was never supposed to. The ghost in coveralls.